kind of role that diagnostics and pathology has played during the COVID pandemic is second to none. And I feel so proud and privileged that one, I'm part of the healthcare industry, and second, I'm a part of the diagnostics industry because testing became so integral as part of the management of the healthcare pandemic, the whole COVID pandemic. As a leader, it's very important that you don't only do things, but you also learn how to get things done. I think that's very important. And the one way of getting things done is by building a team that is truly better than you. The need for qualified healthcare professionals in our country is more than ever. My advice or my message to people is that please take up healthcare because your choice is going to make a difference in the lives of so many people.
Hey listeners, welcome back. This is your channel for creating ripples of inspiration. This is Inspire Someone Today. They say growth happens on the other side of the comfort factor. And with me today is somebody who has mastered this art of experiencing expanding growth by challenging status quo and by operating out of the comfort zone. While he is a doctor, he is also a budding chef. He's a photographer, he's a podcaster, community activator, and much, much more. It's a great honor for me to have Dr. Sanjay today, who is beyond being the founder of Suburban Diagnostics, voted as the 100 most influential healthcare leaders, influential leader of New India, a graduate from Grant Medical College, trained at Tata Hospital, John Hopkins, and Henry Ford. I don't think I need to say any much more of this wonderful personality we have today on Inspire Someone Today. Dr. Sanjay, welcome to the show.
So kind of you. Thank you for the kind words, Shrikant. It's an honor and a privilege to be part of this series. I know you've been doing some exemplary work, over the last 2 years and more. And I feel really honored to be selected for this Inspire Someone series. I hope I can do justice to it.
Thank you, Doc. I have been eyeing to have you as my guest for months now. So finally, you made our dream come true. Thank you so much for taking time. I think as we get started, I would want to talk to you, the doctor, as an entrepreneur and healthcare leader. How did this journey unfold? What has been the lessons that you have in this journey of being an entrepreneur?
So Shrikant, actually, I'm a trained medical professional, and I never trained to be an entrepreneur, I guess. I never worked with someone. I never worked under someone. So one of the earliest pieces of inputs that I got from my father was that be your own boss as much as possible. So that actually propelled me into, starting my own center. So my wife, Anju, and I are the two co-founders of Suburban Diagnostics. And we've been working together for, ever since. I realized that there are simple things that we do on a day-to-day basis that, teach us many things. And I remember when I used to, early days, we were just few of us and I had to reach the lab at 6:45 in the morning. I had to open the shutter. And at around 8:30 at night, I'd have to pull the shutter down. And I used to do this every day for a long period of time because, that was the number of staff that we had. I soon realized, Srikant, that just by opening and closing the shutter, there are so many lessons that I'm learning just from that. Maybe I can share a few of them. The first lesson that I learned was a sense of humility. That no matter what you do, where you are, how big you are, every day is a fresh day and you have to start by bending in forward of something bigger than you. So when you have to lift and to open a shutter, you have to bend down to lift the shutter and then move it up. So that actually taught me that no matter where you are, stay grounded, stay humble. Every day is a new beginning and you have to start that day by bending in front of something bigger than you, something which is more powerful than you. And that opening the shutter taught me that almost every day. It taught me that I have to be on time. If I don't reach on time at 6:45, the people will not be able to work after that. So it taught me a sense of punctuality. It taught me a sense of ownership, taught me a sense of accountability, that I have that accountability, I have that sense of ownership because I have the keys in my hand and I must reach on time. So punctuality, came from that. It taught me that I must have a backup plan. That what if I can't reach at 6:45 in the morning? But the work should continue. Work cannot stop. So, you must always have some sort of a backup plan so that somebody else can open the shutter in case you can't. So these are some of the lessons that I had learned, just by opening a shutter, and these continue to stay with me even today. Always stay humble. Make sure live up to your commitments, being on time, being punctual. Make sure that you have a backup plan, especially the traffic in Mumbai. You know that you're never going to make it on time. So try and leave enough in time and don't say that, traffic was bad today. Have a backup plan that even if you get stuck in traffic, you reach in time. I think the other lesson that I've learned is the importance of relationships. Everything in my life has been an outcome of relationships. Relationships with my family and friends, a relationship with my colleagues or co-workers, relationship with my customers. And many of my customers have now become dear friends. And most importantly, relationship with my business partners. The two words that I don't use in my vocabulary, one is employee and one is vendor. I don't use the word employee and I prefer to use colleagues, co-workers, teammates. And I don't use the word vendor, I use business partners. So I think I've learned a lot by the relationships that I've maintained, and almost everything that has happened as a progress within my lab has been inputs that I've received from these business partners of mine. So relationships, how to ensure that you work towards strengthening those relationships. Childhood lesson my father gave me on relationships. Shrikant, he said that relationships is like an elastic. You hold one end and I hold the other end. And you can stretch that elastic up to a point beyond which the elastic will break and it will hit you, it will hit me also. It hit the two people who are holding the two ends. So don't stretch a relationship beyond a point. Eventually it will break and it will hurt people on both sides.
How profound is that?
Yeah. And I guess the biggest lesson, as you mentioned about entrepreneurship, was that neither Anju, my wife, or I had actually run an enterprise. And we had to practically do everything with our own hands. I think getting our hands dirty actually was the biggest learning for both of us because we had to do everything ourselves. So I've always kept that mind that the best way to learn something is get your hands dirty. Your experience, your background will allow the learning curve to be far steeper, but getting your hands dirty will actually allow you to learn things much better. So that for me has been a big lesson.
A great start to the talk, Doc. I think there's some wonderful lessons, and I must admire the advice given to you by your dad. Otherwise, the country would have lost a wonderful entrepreneur. Having said that, does your colleagues come back to you and ask you what's the journey been like on the road not taken? So you've been an entrepreneur, you wanted to kind of be on your own. And what I've also kind of seen along the way is these little nuggets that you pick up, right? Just by virtue of closing the door, you have a life lesson out there. So does your colleague come and ask you? It's intriguing to see how do you find meaning out of everything that you do?
So, I had just been for a conference recently, a large, business partner, a large international diagnostic company who supplies equipment and reagents to us, organized a conference recently in Jaipur, and I was invited to be one of the speakers there. And I was telling my wife that, you almost feel like a little bit of a celebrity where people, the youngsters come up and want to, take a picture with you. Many people invite you to share your learnings, your lessons. Yeah. So, I mean, I get that a lot and I feel truly maybe a little bit overawed by this whole attention. I'm not used to that, but it also makes me feel that, there's so much that people can, if you share your experience and your stories and your mistakes with people, that is my objective today, Shrikant, is that through platforms like yours, what I want to do is share the mistakes that I have made so that people don't make that mistakes. But the road not so traveled as you asked, is that I think for me, it's always been listening to my gut. I always think and I work from my heart. And people who know me well often say that this is your strength, but also your weakness. That I'm always my true authentic self. What you see is what you get. There is no gray zone. it's always all or none for me, like a switch, either it's on or it's off. There's no in between. So, which is good. But sometimes, it can become a little intimidating for people across the table. So, as they say that, there are both sides to it. But more often than not, Srikant, it's helped me when I'm sticking to my gut instinct. I feel that there is a sense of purpose in what I'm trying to do. I think these two things have been my North Star or my guiding light, that it has to feel good in my heart and I have to have a sense of purpose. I don't want to do anything which has no sense of purpose or meaning. So it has to make a difference. And I often ask this question to people who choose to be part of the healthcare ecosystem. That why did you choose healthcare? Because I spoke at that platform the other day that I did not choose to be part of the healthcare industry. I just had the grades, so it became easier for me to get into healthcare. But I remain a part of the healthcare industry by choice. I want to remain a part of the healthcare industry because of the impact healthcare makes in people's lives. And that is unmatched. Just a thank you from somebody who has benefited out of your work is more gratifying than anything else. So for me, one good day is getting one thank you a day from somebody who says thank you. That for me is a day well spent. So, I'm a little basic in my approach, but if it feels good in my heart, if I think I'm making a difference to someone's life, and if someone says thank you to me, I think that's a good day.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Coming from somebody who has accomplished so much in professional life, personal life, to kind of talk about the basics of it. It's just the humility, it's just the gratefulness around it. And you did mention that one thank you a day is good enough. This channel is going across the nation, across the globe. I'm sure people listening to it would want to say many thank you at the end of the show. So, with that said, if people are wondering what is this conversation all about, we definitely would want to jump into Dr. Sanjay's backstory. How did this all happen? How did you end up being what you have been doing? Would be interesting to know your backstory.
Sure, sure. So, like I mentioned, just briefly ago, that I was always an engineering student. I always wanted to get into engineering. In fact, after my class 12, I got admitted to VJTI, which is one of the top engineering colleges of Mumbai. But for some strange reason, I had not dropped biology from my curriculum. I also did well in biology, so my grades allowed me to be eligible for medical college. So I remember when the merit list was up and my name was there in that list, my father only said two words. He said, "Soch lo, think about it." And I guess those two words had such a impact that there was no healthcare professional in our family, and I said, "Okay." So I actually pulled my admission papers out from VJTI and I took admission into Grand Medical College. And that's how my journey started. First 6 months of my life were in Grand Medical College were truly, as they say, fish out of water. I had no clue what I was doing there because everybody who was in medicine wanted to be there because of choice. I did it, because maybe, of serendipity or maybe something bigger in life was in stock for me. But once I was in it, then I said, let me just put my head down and I do the best I can. So that was my journey through medical college. And I remember when I had to select a specialization for my MD, I wanted to do surgery. I was very good in surgery. I thought I might do radiology. But again, I think the group of friends that I built almost nudged me into where I am today in pathology. And if I was to look back, the kind of role that diagnostics and pathology has played during the COVID pandemic is second to none. And I feel so proud and privileged that one, I'm part of the healthcare industry, and second, I'm a part of the diagnostics industry because testing became so integral as part of the management of the healthcare pandemic, the whole COVID pandemic. And I feel that, maybe at the right place at the right time, because on 20th of March or 24th of March 2020, we did our first COVID test at Suburban Diagnostics. 24th of March happens to be my birthday. And I will never forget my 54th birthday that, we did our first COVID test on that day, and we have done millions of tests after that. And my team told me that, hey, Dr. Arora, I don't think you can ever get a better birthday gift in your life than this, that on your birthday, we reported the first COVID test and we were able to help millions of families navigate this whole journey through COVID. I guess sometimes, a friend of mine said that we make plans for life, but life sometimes has a plan for us. And that suppose maybe I think happened for me, that I had some other plans in life, but life had a different plan for me. And I'm so glad that, what has happened for the right reasons. I'm truly proud and privileged to be a part of the healthcare industry.
Can't agree more to that, that life has plans for us while we may have planned for it. And from what I've seen and followed your career, again, lot of it through the online social media bit of it, is in whatever life had plans for you, doctor, you seem to have taken it full on with lot of passion towards each of that stuff that you have done. So what is the recipe there, or what's the prescription the doc can write around one following their passion or doing good with their passion?
Passion, I guess, comes naturally to some people. I guess for me, people used to ask me that what is it that makes me wake up every morning and want to go to work? And the answer is the same, Shrikant, that the impact you can make in someone's life is huge. And through the work that you do, if you're making a difference in people's lives, I think that is a great sense of purpose, a great sense of, connect, a great sense of guiding light that, today I can get up and do something which can make a difference. The other thing that keeps me going, Shrikant, is I always try to become a better version of myself. So I'm most competitive with my own self. That how can my tomorrow be better than today? What can I do to make sure that my next week is better than this week? What can I do to make sure my next month is better than this month? So, I'm a constant student. I'm a constant learner. I'm learning already few tricks in this podcast that, has hardly been, 15, 20 minutes of us talking, but I see the way you are prepared for it, and the kind of studio setup you have, the mic that you have, and if I have to become better at podcasting, I've already taken cues from how you are preparing for it. So for me, constantly trying to become a better version of myself and making sure that better version of myself makes a difference in people's lives. These are the two things that strive that passion for me, which is, keeps me going every day.
That's wonderful. And being a doc yourself, I think learning is a lifelong journey. But for others, if they were to kind of be the better version of themselves, are there certain practices that you adapt that makes it part and parcel of who you are? One thing that I kind of gathered as we are speaking is your tremendous ability to kind of pick on things, the curiosity. Within the short span of 15 minutes, you have picked up three or four things that you want to do. So, yes, curiosity plays a big part in that everyday learning.
I think sometimes these are just innate qualities. I guess we're just born with it. Maybe I can complement the genetics that I've got from my parents, the genes that I've got, or the environment that you are born in. I'll give you an example. School for people is a very strong foundation. And I had the opportunity of attending 5 schools during my class from 1 to 10. So I changed schools every 2 years, not because of design, but just by circumstances. My father was in Delhi when I was in my younger classes. Then he came to Mumbai. Then my father wanted me to go to boarding school. Then we actually migrated to Canada and then came back to Mumbai. So almost every 2 years I changed. I was not in any school for more than 2 years. I guess that also the kind of exposure I got during school allowed me to, explore different new opportunities, become adaptable to different circumstances, and make different friends. So I have today we have I'm part of 3 school groups. A school group in Mumbai, and my boarding school, and I have few friends in Canada that I'm still in touch with. So, and I guess each these interactions in life drive some level of curiosity as well, because I think if you can find an opportunity to learn from each other, there's no better way to learn. I think, as you said, in healthcare is a constantly evolving, and technology plays a big role, specifically in diagnostics. This conference I was recently attending just stirred up so much of curiosity in how the oncology space is being dictated by personalized diagnostics. And that's a big area for me to learn into. It wasn't a part of my books when I was, studying to be a pathologist. Now I am taking an online program from Harvard in precision medicine. So I think it what strikes your interest. So I have an interest towards becoming better at my profession, obviously, or my core subject of pathology. But I think podcasting, like I just said, is also an interest for me, and I'm already learning from you.
With all of this going on, I'm sure the question on everybody's mind, I'm sure your friends, family members would ask you this. How does doc drive work life balance, work life harmony? What's the secret behind that?
So that was a hard lesson, actually, Shrikant. When you have this kind of enthusiasm and you want to make a difference, you have a point to prove to yourself almost every day. Hard work then becomes a natural outcome of this. You just put in that many number of hours. But the biggest one lesson that I would like to share with people is that make sure that you don't only work hard, but you also work smart. As a leader, it's very important that you don't only do things, but you also learn how to get things done. I think that's very important. And the one way of getting things done is by building a team that is truly better than you. So if you want to grow as an enterprise, you want to grow as an organization, you have to make sure that you build a team around you that takes away some of your key loads. And the one message as a leader that I keep sharing is a good leader is one who is not needed. A good leader is one who is redundant, so that he or she as a leader can then think about things which are bigger and better for the organization, for the enterprise. They're able to focus on new opportunities, strategies, and are not caught by the day-to-day operations. And that was a hard learning for me. That was something that allowed me to think differently, because I was constantly reaching there at 7 in the morning, going back at 9 at night. And I thought, okay, while initially it was important, you put in the hard work, but also you need to put in that smart work. Not only doing things, but making sure you get things done. And I think there's this whole concept of burnout. And we have seen that during the pandemic that, there's a lot of burnout that is happening. So for me, I fell ill, because of this. It had an impact on my body. I'll give you an example of the shutter story again. To open a shutter, you need to have a strong back, because you have to bend down and lift the shutter up. If your back is not strong, you're just not going to be able to lift the shutter up. So to look after anything else in life, it is very important that we look after ourselves. If you and I are having to do this podcast today, I mean, it's important that we are in our right frame of physical, mental, emotional health. Only then we'll be able to do this. But if we are not there, I think even if the intent is there, we'll not be able to do it. So I learned that the hard way, that to make sure that to look after anything in life, first look after yourself. One of my favorite lines is, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to first fill your cup, so then only you can pour. And I say life is two sides of a business card, and my business card is truly like that. On one side is my professional qualification, which talks about my medical background. But on the other side, I talk about the whole, as you said, work-life balance, on what is the other side of Sanjay Arora, and where I, aspire to be a chef. I aspire to be a DJ. I write a lot of lyrics, which I'm trying to produce into songs. I'm an avid traveler where I do a lot of travel photography. So how do you keep that balance in life? And the Indian culture teaches us many things, Srikanth. One of the basic things in Indian culture is, when we come back home from work, more often than not, we remove our shoes at the door. We wipe our shoes on the mat and then we take off our shoes. We don't normally carry our shoes inside the house. That is a very deliberate act which everybody should follow. That when I'm taking my shoes off, I am telling myself that part of my day has ended. Now I'm ending a different phase of the day. Make sure that you end that part of the day with the shoes taken off. And when you wear your shoes again the next day, then you restart that. So between the time you take your shoes off and you wear your shoes again, it's a different part of your life. It's like when you are driving your car and you come back home and you hang your keys. And once you hang your keys, you're hanging that part of the day. Unless you take your keys until the next day, it's a different part of your day. So, these deliberate acts should actually remind us that there is work, but there is also a different part of life that has to be managed. And it's come out of challenges. Anju and I both worked together, so we used to carry work home very often. It had a bad impact on my family and my children. And I learned this the hard way. So I want to make sure that people don't do the same thing. They say that working with your spouse can be difficult. Yes, it can be a blessing, but it also can be a challenge. But it's up to us how we make the most of it. So ensure that when you take your shoes off from tomorrow, when you come back from work, that part of the day is ended.
That's a beautiful analogy that we each one of us can relate to, Doc. Thanks for sharing that analogy. Having said that, in the times that we are in, though metamorphically we can kind of say that I leave my shoes at the doorstep, walk into the house, but I don't leave my cell phone at the doorstep. And that changes the whole complexity of the work life balance. So, in that kind of a scenario, what would you recommend that one can adapt or practice to ensure that that work life balance is there, not just in terms of having a better personal life, but like you said, you are wearing multiple hats. You are a DJ, you are a storyteller, you are, I don't know what else am I missing. So how do you kind of create spaces for each of it?
So I think again, this has happened not by design, but over a period of time. My sister is a trained chef, and when she was learning how to be a chef, she experimented on us at home, and that fueled my passion for good food. And then after she left and she became part of the corporate ecosystem, she stopped cooking. So I learned cooking, as sort of looking at my sister and inspired by my sister and her friends. And somehow I continued to follow that. So one thing that I try and do religiously is every Sunday at least I cook breakfast for my family. And I'm telling you, cooking is so cathartic. We talk about mindfulness. When you're cooking, you are mindful. You are doing only that. If you are cutting vegetables, you are so focused that you're not going to cut your finger, how to cut the vegetables. When you're frying something, you're making sure that the heat is just right. When you're baking something, the temperature has to be correct. The mix has to be exactly the right consistency. So I make breakfast at least 2, 3 times a month on Sundays for my family. And that I've perfected that recipe over the last almost 40 years now. So that, and I love cooking. So I would try and, download a recipe. So I use my phone more for downloading the recipes or listening to music or reading digital content. And I make sure that I put a sleep cycle on my phone that from 10:45 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., my phone actually goes into a sleep mode. And if I want to change that, only then. But if people are trying to reach me, my phone is in the sleep mode. So they know my wife's phone will remain on. If somebody really wants to reach me, they'll call my wife's phone and then I'll speak to them if there is a medical emergency. But more often than not, I put my phone also on a sleep mode and I make sure that I try and get good 7 hours of sleep. That for me is extremely important. I think we underestimate the importance of sleep. We recharge our phone batteries, but we don't recharge our own body's batteries. So when you're recharging your phone, guys, make sure that you recharge your own batteries also. And I think it's equally important that your phone requires overnight charging. Your body's batteries also require overnight charging. So take time out for anything that is of interest to you. I think music is a great stress reliever. Exercise for me is a great stress reliever. Again, I was always a very active sports person, but when you get into becoming an entrepreneur, you take everything else, on the sidelines and you focus completely on your work. I developed, high blood pressure. So I was forced to go to the gym. Now it's been almost 12, 13 years that I've been having a personal trainer and we work out 3 days a week. Best time of my day is that 1.5 hours I spend with my trainer 3 times a week. I would encourage exercise of any kind, whether it is brisk walking, whether it is playing a sport. Playing a sport is actually even better, or having a personal trainer. Some form of exercise, music of any kind, cooking up for me works. I think traveling is a great source of relaxation. Photography, again, mindfulness. We just focused getting the right picture, the right angle, the right light, composition. So there's so many aspects of photography and digital photography. Everybody's now become a digital photographer through their phones, so everybody's now become a good photographer. So use that skill to your advantage. So there's so many ways to create this balance, I feel.
So nice. And there is no escape of not talking leadership messages, leadership experiences when you're talking to Dr. Sanjay. So, Doc, what has been your leadership analogies, leadership stories that you can share with me and my listeners?
So during the pandemic, I happened to get the opportunity during the lockdown. I had the opportunity of being coached by Marshall Goldsmith. He's one of the world's most, sought after leadership gurus. And there were 4 words that have had a lasting impact on me, which I want to share with you and everybody else. So I'll explain those 4 words and then I'll mention those 4 words to you. So whenever we are having a conversation or we are in a situation, we tend to judge the other side very easily. And we say, why did that not happen? So we are very quick in making a judgment. So the 4 words actually switch that around and say, judge less, help more. What we tend to do is we judge more and we help less. So just change that term, that thing. For me, has had such a lasting impact that in any situation, how can I judge less and how can I help more? So that for me is one of the biggest leadership lessons that I've had. The other was through that group, we realized again, how I spoke about relationships, that relationships are the currency of life and how it is important that you make sure that you maintain those relationships. One of the earliest pieces of advice I got was from a very senior HR consultant who started working with us. And he said, just because you are the leader, you have that power of saying and doing anything that you want. But that doesn't mean you use that power the way you want. So just because you have that power doesn't mean you should use that power. So I think it's one of the Batman or Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. I think Spider-Man movies. So it's also important that how you use that power effectively. I think one of the messages I learned from my team as a leader is that the leader sets the tone for the organization. So lead by example. What you expect from people, first practice yourself. If you want people to be punctual, you should be punctual. If you want people to dress in a particular way, you should dress in a particular way. So lead by example. Whenever you walk to office in the morning, make sure you are sporting a smile. It just sort of puts everybody at ease. So make sure you start the day on the right note by just having that right smile, the right attitude for your team. It sort of puts everybody at ease. So because everybody's looking at you as a leader. You set the tone. But we can go on and on for leadership. I mean, we can have a separate series only on leadership because there are so many mistakes that I have made, Srikanth, and I'll be happy to, maybe share some of them so that people don't make those same mistakes.
That would be fantastic, Doc. I think we can definitely have a focused leadership lessons through your journey itself.
As a leader, we tend to speak a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not the smartest person in the room, don't speak. It's okay. Just because you are a leader does not mean you have to speak at everything at every time. So if on a particular subject you are not the smartest person, you can sit back and listen also. You don't have to make a point at every time. And it's okay to. And I was told that Sundar Pichai was chosen to be the leader of Google for this very quality, that he didn't speak every time, but he only spoke when it mattered. And he spoke when his feedback made a difference. So just because you're a leader doesn't mean you have to speak at every opportunity. You can sometimes just listen and keep quiet.
Here we are with Dr. Sanjay and the power of three round. Doc, three practices that are very unique to you.
So one is, I'm very authentic. I wear my heart on my sleeve. What you see is what you get. There is no gray zone, So I'm an open book, so you'll see what you get. I speak my mind. I speak from the heart. There's no ambiguity in what I'm, speaking or saying. And I think I find it difficult to say no. People know that to get a yes from him is fairly easy. So people use that sometimes to their advantage. So I find it difficult to say no. Maybe because of my profession, I'm not used to saying no in my profession. You can't say no to a patient. So I guess that somehow carried on into my other parts of life as well.
People love you for that, Doc, so keep at it. That's a good start to the power of three round. Doc, three change makers or change making organizations that you're keenly following.
So one of my ambitions in life is to do a program at Harvard. Harvard has been a management institution of repute, a medical institution of repute. So I keep following, and I'm in fact doing an online program in Harvard as we speak today. So Harvard is definitely one institute that I follow. From a medical institution, Mayo Clinic for me is the benchmark. And, Mayo Clinic is another peerless organization in the US, that I follow. I'm a very avid sports follower, so I follow a lot of sportsmen, sportswomen. And I think, sports can teach us so much about life. And I think MS Dhoni is a great role model for people to follow in sport. We just saw the whole Nadal and Federer relationship in sports. I think sports is a great reflection on life. And I get inspired by a lot of sports people. So I follow sports very passionately.
Sports as a metaphor for life.
Yes, sports is a metaphor for life. Absolutely.
Doc, we did speak a lot about your business. This is slightly a different take on that. Three things that you would do differently today if you were to rebuild the business.
So I think one is nobody knows your business better than you. So don't give anybody else credit more than what they deserve. So sometimes when you bring on somebody as a partner, as an investor, sometimes you give them more credit than is due. So I think perhaps I did that. I sometimes gave more credit than is due. I would not do that. If I had to rebuild, I would have probably built a team, stronger team earlier in my career than what I took. I mean, I almost took, I started in 94 and I started building out my team almost in 2013. So almost 10 years after I had started. So for 10 years, it was just Anju and me who were running the organization. Perhaps I would have, focused on building my team earlier. And last is, I guess I would have continued to stick to one area of specialization that was, very dear to me, which was cytopathology. I should have held on to that a little stronger than becoming more of a generalist or more of a entrepreneur. While all that would have happened, I would have, I would have held on to my specialization of cytopathology a little more. Perhaps these are the three things I would have probably done differently. So I'm currently reading a book, this is called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And I would recommend this book for everybody. I think it's actually a book which is free on the internet. If people just Google Almanac of Naval Ravikant, they can download the PDF for free. I'm inspired by autobiographies, so I read a few autobiographies. I guess Steve Jobs perhaps is a very inspiring story. Nowadays, I read a lot of digital content, Shrikant, and there's one app that I would recommend people to use it's called Pocket, Pocket. Now, what Pocket does is it curates articles from the best publications internationally, and it curates them in a very concise manner, and you get actually best of everything in just one app. I would recommend people to download and use this app. It's got great content from across the globe on every kind of topic that you can think of. So this is probably three topics or three book recommendations or reading material that I would suggest.
Fantastic. Doc, you're doing great in the power of three round. The last of the power of three round questions here. If there is no limitation and if you were to have lunch or dinner with these three individuals, past or present, who would those three individuals be?
Wow, that's a big list I can come up with. So, for me, if it's a dinner, then it has to be any of the Michelin star chefs. I'll have to, find a chef. So I know this restaurant in Delhi called Indian Accent, and there's Chef Mehrotra. So, and it's been voted India's number one restaurant for many years now. So I would love to have a dinner conversation with Chef Mehrotra to understand how did he build this brand and, this whole intricacies around that. I would love to have a meal with, there's a rock band called U2, which is led by Bono. I would love to have, a dinner with Bono. And perhaps, I'm a big fan of good filmmaking. And I think Tom Hanks is perhaps one of the top actors that I've come across. So maybe a interaction with Tom Hanks would be something I would really like.
Great. So that was a power of three round. With me is Dr. Sanjay. We continue our conversations. No conversation is complete without discussing healthcare and technology. And like you rightly mentioned, Doc, with pandemic, post-pandemic, the importance of technology in this space is lot more than what it was perceived earlier on. With that said, what does the future hold for us at the intersection of medicine and technology? What do you see as the crystal ball moment at this point of time?
So as you said, Shrikant, that the most common alphabets today known across the planet are RT-PCR. Now, RT-PCR was such a complex test, which before COVID, nobody, even in diagnostics, knew as much or in healthcare knew. Today, everybody knows what is RT-PCR. And I think we should not have to hold a pandemic, just to bring technology to the forefront. But I think truly, so there are two aspects of technology that I would like to speak about, Shrikant. One is how technology is making healthcare more accessible. I think that's perhaps, at least in India, we are seeing that how we can penetrate the access of technology using healthcare. So whether it is teleconsultation, telemedicine, telepathology, teleradiology, just the whole penetration and the access to the common man for healthcare. I think that for me is a big opportunity. And we're trying to see how we can leverage making healthcare more accessible for people. Second aspect is the whole core aspect of how technology is making healthcare more personalized. So today, healthcare is a lot more generic. And let's take the field of oncology. When I was studying to be a pathologist, the diagnosis used to be based on what we saw under the microscope. And we used to see a slide and we would decide, is it cancer or it's not cancer? And there are some common types. There is squamous cell carcinoma and there's adenocarcinoma. And we would be able to. Today, the diagnosis has become at the molecular level. And why it has become at the molecular level is because based on the molecular construct of the cancer, the right kind of matching therapeutic drug is now available. So you have diagnosis now, which is at the molecular level to match with the right kind of personalized therapy that is available. So healthcare is becoming a lot more personalized, a lot more specific, and that I believe is going to just dramatically change health outcomes. A diabetic today is taken a common drug called metformin. But if you do personalized genomics of every individual, you would know which person is going to respond to metformin and which person is not going to. So you only give it to those people who will respond to it. So the whole advent of molecular and genomics is going to just revolutionize the way the healthcare is being diagnosed and practiced, treated. And I think the next 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to see, we are at the right time, at the right place to just see how this is going to just explode for the benefit of mankind. So both from accessibility as well as the delivery of healthcare, I think technology is going to play a significant role as we move forward.
That's super news. Close on the heels of that, I know you're a big proponent of nudging youngsters into this profession, into the medical field. Close on the heels of that is a dogma around entering this profession. Call it the entry barriers because it's long and arduous. You got to be a lifelong learner. The success and commitment is lifelong, so on and so forth. So what would be your word of advice for people looking into this sector, wanting to come in and wanting to kind of dodge those dogmas?
So I'll tell you a small backstory to this, if it's okay. That I have two daughters, and I knew very early in their life that the older one had no interest in medicine at all. It was somehow obvious. But I also knew the younger one was, perfectly suited for the medical industry. The older one is a lot more creative and thinks laterally out of the box. The younger one is a lot more process driven, more linear in her thought process. And so it is. The older one is an entrepreneur and the younger one is a medical professional. And people tell me that you must have forced your children into, and the older one, even though she's an entrepreneur, her profession is in healthcare skilling. So she runs a healthcare skilling institute for paramedical staff. So somehow or the other, they both got connected to healthcare. And as we know in diagnostics, the commonest test that we do is a complete blood count or a CBC, which does hemoglobin, RBC, WBC. So CBC is the commonest test that we do. So I tell people, that because of the environment we are living in at home, as children grow up, the first alphabets in most household is ABC. In my household, it was CBC. So it just happened by, just by the environment that my children were so used to me talking about CBC and things that it sort of just percolated. But coming back to your original question, Srikant, that, in India in healthcare is often berated and put down and say, as you said, it's, the entry barriers are very tough because you need to be a exceptionally good student. You need to score really well on your entrance exams. Then you have to, study for 5.5 years to finish MBBS, then 3 years of MD, and another 3 years of super specialization plus bond of 1 to 2 years. So it's a 11, 12-year program. But I think if we see the demand supply gap in our country today, Srikant, that, we still don't have one doctor for even 1,000 population, and that is in the urban. In the rural, it's even bigger, the divide. We don't have one hospital bed for 1,000 people. So I think the need for qualified healthcare professionals in our country is more than ever. my advice or my message to people is that please take up healthcare, because your choice is going to make a difference in the lives of so many people. And while people think that healthcare has become a lot more commercialized and commoditized, I still believe, I'm still a romantic at heart, that you can't take away the doctor-patient relationship if you don't want it to be taken away. That's the way I've practiced. That even when we built our diagnostic labs, I always had my lab surrounded by glass. So people could see me when they walked inside, and people had to just knock on that glass, seeing me behind my microscope, and I would walk outside and meet every patient personally. So it's about how you want to practice it today. You can still make it that doctor-patient relationship. And like I said in the beginning, the one thank you from a patient makes everything worthwhile. So I think there is a need for people to choose healthcare and choose it for the right reasons, not because you think it's got glamour or it's got money or it's got fame, but because one is there is a need in this country for good medical practitioners. And second, I think the impact and the way science and technology is developing, the impact that can make in health outcomes in India is just going to escalate. It's going to improve significantly. So I would encourage more and more people to take up healthcare.
Great message out there, Doc. One, there is a need. Two, if you are somebody who wants to make that impact, there is an opportunity to make that impact. And three, really caring for the human lives. So if it is the core of what you are as an individual, this is for somebody to kind of pursue.
Absolutely.
So we are entering this segment. This is a bittersweet segment for me, Doc, where this is time for me to say goodbye to my guests. At the same time, get message from them. So this show is all about creating ripples of inspiration. So before we sign off, for all the listeners out there, what is Dr. Sanjay's Inspire Someone Today message?
Listen to your heart. Do what makes you happy. I think it's very important that you listen to that inner voice from within and, follow that calling. I think that's very, very important. That there's so much of, I was reading an article that how the internet gives us so many choices that we're left with no choice. That, we're just bombarded with so much of stimulus 24/7 that we don't really have time to think for ourselves. I think this is the time when you listen to yourself, you listen to that inner voice and follow your inner calling. I think that's the most important message I would like to give people is find time and find ways to listen to your inner self and follow that.
Find time to listen to your heart. So that was no jargons used from the dog who used plain English that you and I can interpret, intercept, and implement. True to his words, he used voice, heart, and the happiness. That is what one need to have to kind of take things forward. Doc, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show to hear you out. Like I said, it's been many, many months of wanting to have you on the show, and you didn't disappoint me and my listeners a bit. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what you listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.